To the New South Wales south coast now, and a sad day for environmentalists and fans of Sir Mix-a-Lot, as Shoalhaven's iconic bum tree was cut down to make way for a new road. Amidst cries of shame, the naked buttock-shaped eucalypt was removed by tree surgeons who presumably had majors in proctology. Scientists estimate the bum tree is more than 400 years old after a close inspection of its rings. But one question does remain: if a bum tree farts in the forest, does anybody hear it? I guess we'll never know.
News from countries that aren't Australia.
Well, to the UK first, where fried poultry giant KFC has launched the world's first edible coffee cup. The chocolate crockery is infused with ambient aromas, including freshly cut grass and coconut sun cream. Nothing like a hot cup of lawn or a nice steaming mug of tanning lotion. Still, I'll be the first to admit that if KFC goes on to sell drinkable coffee, these cups could prove very popular. To San Francisco now, where a rare pair of early 90s Apple-branded sneakers have turned up at a garage sale and are expected to fetch up to $48,000 at auction. That's ridiculous. What idiot would pay in excess of market value for an outdated tech relic from the 1990s? Now, believe it or not, these shoes weren't Apple's first foray into clothing and apparel. Anyone remember the Macintosh? Well, China has finished constructing the world's largest radio telescope at a cost of $185 million. It's pretty expensive for a Chinese dish. I don't care how much complimentary green tea comes with it. And finally, to a museum in Philadelphia, where America's souring relationship with China was again on display this week. Someone with an American accent explains.
A terracotta statue on loan from China was vandalized when Delaware resident Michael Rohana apparently stole the warrior's thumb.
Really, if the world's two superpowers are ever going to get along and trust each other, both sides really must put a stop to all forms of digital hacking. That very impressive Turnbull Coalition team logo. It's very presidential, isn't it? Don't you think? Blue and gold with an inlaid blaze on and a single circle rim. Mind you, it also looks like the video game high school logo. What I really like about it is that it shows Australia completely surrounded by a strong, defined border. Whereas if you compare it with Labor's seal, their border is very ill-defined. Actually missing at the top end. Not quite the message to send if you're trying to appeal to people's worst instincts. Now, as you might recall, it was just a week ago tonight, on International Women's Day Eve, we couldn't get to sleep. So excited were we, hoping to catch a glimpse of old Father Woman coming down the glass chimney to bring every boy and every girl the gift of gender equality. Now, my only regret was that we don't go to air on a Thursday, because then I could have participated in the age-old ABC tradition of stepping aside as a male presenter and allowing a woman to take over my duties just for that day. I know it sounds like an old-fashioned patronising novelty, like Opposite Day or Backwards Day, where everything normal is the other way around, or the 40-hour famine, where we get to pretend to be dying of starvation for a worthy cause. It's all just a bit of fun. Former Minister for Women during the Abbott government, Tony Abbott, seized the day to label calls to exempt tampons from the GST a politically correct mistake. And he might be right. A correct mistake does kind of cancel itself out, doesn't it? So I'm not sure it's worth the effort. Of course, he is talking about political correctness, and once you correct a mistake politically, then you make a rod for your back as a politician, have to keep doing it. As Tony went on to say,
look, once you start having these sorts of exemptions, where does it end? Where does it end?
Probably with wage parity, proportional representation on the front bench, and male politicians not referring to female politicians by saying...
They're young, they're feisty, I think I can probably say have a bit of sex appeal.
Now, Tone Deaf also took the opportunity to go on 2GB to voice his concerns about gender quotas.
I think quotas are a problem, because then people aren't always thought to be there on merit. And look, I'm a little worried about what often sounds like an anti-man agenda.
Now, no, you're very... No. Bad audience. Don't listen to them. I don't want to be unfair to Tony. It's perfectly normal to be afraid of new things. But an anti-man agenda can go a long way to resolving gender inequality. Like matter and antimatter, when a man comes into contact with an anti-man, the two collide to create what is called dark energy, which builds up to a big bang without the sexist double entendre. And then it creates a new universe in which every day is opposite day and everything Tony Abbott thinks is a mistake is correct.
News from countries that aren't Australia.
Well, to Berlin first, where 2 Chinese tourists have been arrested for making Hitler salutes outside the Reichstag building, which could land them in prison for 3 years. 3 years for raising your arm? What is this, Nazi Germany? When Hitler went to jail, it was only for 8 months, and he was Hitler. Oh, hello. To Scotland now, where researchers say tiny flecks of gold could help cure lung cancer after the treatment proved effective on a zebrafish. Researcher from the University of Edinburgh and borderline racist stereotype, Dr. Jean McTierney, you conducted this test?
I did, Shaun, that's right. I implanted a wee thing in the brain of the zebrafish and it cured him. Well, we were each surprised, as you can imagine. I didn't ken the who's and the ways at first. So we heard our waste and repeated it, and the results were right, all right.
And this is great news for smokers, obviously, in terms of its human application.
I didn't ken about the human application, Shaun, but it's good news for zebrafish all over the world.
Zebrafish who smoke.
Aye. I mean, it's good and bad, really, with the price of cigarettes as high as they are and the government unlikely to include medicinal gold dust as part of the pharmaceutical benefit scheme. These poor fish are still going to suffer.
Still in the mother country, and England now has its first sewage-powered bus, taking passengers between Bristol and Bath on a single tank of human waste. Roughly what about 5 people would produce in a year, so the trip does take a bit of time. Bristol to Bath is a fitting route. Bristol, of course, is well known as the birthplace of the famous Bristol stool chart. And it makes sense for Bath to be at the end of the line because I imagine by that point you'd certainly need to take one. And finally to upstate New York now, where the mayor of a local town has been arrested for stealing 111 road signs. Apparently the limit is 110. Later on in the show, more on that remarkable story about Barbara Streisand having her recently deceased dog cloned to make 2 new ones. Oh, I see. When Barbara Streisand makes pirated copies, it's fine. But when I rip a CD of Shannon Noll's latest album, I'm hurting the industry, apparently. If the government is so concerned...
Shush!
...about Labor's policy...
Pensioners, 230,000 of them.
Why did they do that deal with the Greens back in 2015 that reduced pensions for more than 225,000 Australians and cut it all together for 89,000? Later on, Scott Morrison's anger manager provides an answer.
I'll tell you why, Shaun. I'll tell you why. It's because we've already cut the pension. We've already cut the pension, and pensioners can't possibly be expected to put up with Labor's cash grab as well. The only way to protect the pension is to vote for the party that's already satisfied its pension-cutting urges.
Well, thank you. Well, and before we go, I was on the Herald Sun website trying to find the exit when I stumbled... when I stumbled upon an extraordinary claim that the Great Barrier Reef isn't out of the woods. Now, I'm no expert in oceanography. Excuse me just a moment. Hello? Oh, I see. Well, finally, spare a thought for Barnaby Joyce. After all the travail of the last couple of months, he's suffered yet another fatal body blow. Turns out the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority, which Barn moved from Canberra to Armidale in his New England electorate in 2016, lost more than half of its workforce, with only a quarter saying they were likely to stay on. Which makes me think if only the pesticides the APVMA are making had that sort of strike rate. So farmers, send your thrips, locusts and fruit flies to Armidale today, care of this address. Goodbye.
Jack, baby.